I have enjoyed so far this evening of wonderful oral history, and now I am here to represent the outrageous. Many people, now I'm so incredibly blessed for the career that I have and the history that I have within the Dallas community and at large. And people assume that it was always my goal to be a performer. And the story I want to tell tonight is the backstory to how I have gotten to be where I am today and what I have done today. Because you see, I graduated from Baylor University, also known as Jerusalem on the Brazos. I did not get a theater degree. I do not have a music degree. I have a degree in business with enough hours for a minor in German. Good night. No, I was the dutiful best little boy in the world and did what my parents wanted me to do. And my father dreamed of having a business degreed child in the family. And so that was me. And so I wanted you to have that background as I begin my story so you will know how this all happened. And normally I do like to speak extemporaneously, but this meant a lot to me, so I've actually written this down, and I will be acting an Episcopal priest up here and reading my sermon. That is just not going to work. Sorry. Now, any town's gay community, whether it be large or small, has a category of people that I call the entertainers. More often than not, this category is populated by the drag performers, always ready to slap on a face and lip-sync a song for charity or just good fun. Lucky is the town which has a crop of these performers, plus what I call the deluxe set. These are the entertainers whose talents go beyond the art of drag, whether it be comedy, singing, dance, or any other form of performance art. The LGBT community has been the proving ground for many of these performers. I count myself blessed to be a product of this deluxe part of Dallas's story. It's 1985. I am 24 years old, and I'm living in Bedford, Texas. Whoopee! But I'm working in Dallas at a retail store at Preston and Royal. Like most other gay 20-somethings, my life revolved around the gay bars. Now, being that I am the youngest child in my family by a long shot, I had always surrounded myself with older people. My brothers were older. Obviously, I hung out with my parents who were, older. So it was no surprise that I sought out a crowd of older people at the bar. In 1985, that crowd gathered at a bar at the corner of Oaklawn and Brown called Patrick's. Oh, did you feel that? Friday afternoons, Patrick's was filled with a mature crowd still dressed from work. I was in heaven. It hadn't really occurred to me that as the evening got later, there would be live entertainment on stage at Patrick's. I mean, outside of drag shows, the concept of a cabaret bar never entered my mind. Besides, I couldn't stay late. I had to drive back to Bedford. However, by late 1985, I got my first apartment in Dallas, and my nightlife escapades in Dallas took off. One night, I stayed late at Patrick's after happy hour to see a performer from New Orleans by the name of Ricky Graham. I was mesmerized. Here is this funny gay guy singing song parodies, portraying numerous characters, both male and female, and overall just wowing the crowd. By the third or fourth time I attended Ricky's show, I was hooked. And I vividly remember sitting on a bar stool at the railing, watching Ricky work, and thinking to myself, I want to do that. I think I can do that. The next morning, the thought was gone, but the seed had been planted. In researching the history of Patrick's, I have found that Howard Oken, who owned it, had worked joint agreements with the cabaret bar in Houston called Rascals. They would share airfare to bring in top-rate talent from around the country, and those people would perform 1 week at Rascals and 1 week at Patrick's. It was a great way to get entertainment and keep costs down. Now, Patrick's became a regular part of my social life. Oh, and let me add here at this point that it was at Patrick's that I met the late, great Hal Reeder, a man very dear to the Dallas gay community, and the man who taught me to drink scotch. So it's your fault. In July of 1986, the store I'm working at Preston and Royal goes out of business, and I'm out of a job. It's the mid-'80s in Texas, so this is the second time I have lost a job since graduating from college through no fault of my own. And I said, that's it, I'm done. If I'm going to be unemployed, I'm going to be unemployed and happy. I want to pursue something. I want to pursue performing. I don't know what, but I want to do something. So my first idea, I suddenly became convinced that my vocal talents were woefully underused in the world. Therefore, I must become a successful singer. Specifically, I was determined to become a commercial jingle singer. We're Southwest Airlines, keeping fares low, keeping spirits high for you. Well, that didn't go anywhere. I spent $1,500 on a demo tape and have nothing to show for it. Well, at this point, I've got to make some money. So to make ends meet, I got a job doing singing telegrams for a company called Eastern Onion. Remember them? Western Union, Eastern Onion. Oh, that's funny. And it was simultaneously the worst and best job I have ever had in my life. It was the worst in the sense that it was more than humiliating oftentimes. Remember that scene in the movie Beaches where Bette Midler dresses up as a rabbit and knocks on someone's door? I did the same thing, but as a pink gorilla. However, it was the best job I've ever had because it gave me invaluable experience in performing on the spot in front of strangers. In early 1987, the powers that be at Eastern Onion asked me if I could imitate that new character on Saturday Night Live, the church lady. I gave it a shot. They liked it. Eastern Onion bought me the costume, and I started doing singing telegrams as Dana Carvey's church lady. You like Paul Harvey now? Here's the rest of the story. Meanwhile, I decide to start auditioning for community theater roles, and I start getting cast. In the spring of 1987, a new theater company called the Dallas Alliance Theater was formed, and they produced their first show, the musical 1776, in a makeshift theater space right down the street at the Centrum. It was in a vacant space which is now occupied by salons in the park, but there was a theater there. Cast along with me in that show was a cute blonde actor-pianist named Pat Skinner, whom I'd met doing a show the previous fall. Also cast in that show was a quirky, Bert Lahr-ish looking guy, great character actor named Stephen Crabtree. Stephen was funny, but I thought he was odd. The director and the theater founder was looking for ways to bring awareness and patrons to this new, hard-to-find theater space. So during rehearsals, after watching Stephen and I work on our characters, she approached us and said, "Y'all are funny. Why don't y'all put together an act and we'll do a late-night show and get the bar crowd to come down here to the theater?" No. Neither of us seemed too interested at first, but she was persistent, if not downright annoying. Perhaps to get her off our backs, we relented. After getting to know Stephen a bit and sharing ideas, I really became turned on to the idea. However, I insisted that my cute blonde friend Pat be a part of the action on the piano. Stephen christened the group with a moniker pulled from the current hit on Broadway at the time, and Less Miserable was born. We performed our first show on May the 5th, 1987, at the Centrum to an audience of about 5 people. Word got around, and fortunately, by the next weekend, the crowds had grown. At one performance, a well-dressed young married couple showed up in the audience. Before the show, Stephen and I looked out there and went, "Who's that? Do you know that? I don't know them. Do you know them?" It turns out they thought they were going to see a production of Les Mis. But they ended up laughing their heads off that night, and we developed our first bona fide straight fans. Now, of course, Church Lady became an integral part of any Less Miserable show, as did my less than politically correct character, Quintessa Wallace. Most importantly, between Stephen's creation of our sketch as the Luby's Ladies, his genius commercial parodies, my political song parodies, and the birth of not only the realtor Nelda Pickens, but her sisters, used car lot owner Nadine and hairdresser Naomi, the Pickens sisters and Less Miserable were having the time of their lives. A young writer from the Dallas Observer came to give us our first glowing review, and her name is Elaine Liner. It occurred to me, I'm becoming Ricky Graham. We should perform elsewhere, but alas, in 1987, Patrick's closed, and the Dallas Alliance Theater's lease at the Centrum ran out in 1988. And I thought, well, Less Miserable is just going to be a quick flash in the pan. Patience is a virtue. In 1988, Johnny Lemons, the man who had been the PR person behind Patrick's, pulled a couple of financial backers together. He leased a space in a strip center on Wycliffe and opened his own version of Patrick's, eponymously named John L's. Soon, the displaced Patrick's crowd began flocking to John L's for cocktails, happy hour buffets, and a renewed roster of talent from around the country. Now, I don't know if Johnny kept the same deal with Rascals in Houston, but he managed to bring in some great out-of-town performers. Fortunately, this was also a time when there was great entertainment here in Dallas. Somebody had remembered Less Miserable from Dallas Alliance Theater and suggested us to Johnny. In 1988, we were given our first weekend gig at John L's, and the rest, as they say, is history. We became one of the top 3 cabaret acts in Dallas at the time. It was Less Miserable, a trio of comedy with music, Wise Guys, a trio of comedy with music, that's right, that's with music with comedy, singers with comedy, and RSVP, a male-female quartet of local musical theater pros. Rotating with us on the schedule were such great acts as Linda Petty from Dallas, Montgomery Plant and Stritch from Houston, Tony Rose from Boston, Deb Armelino from New York City, Chris Francis from Provincetown, Michael Greer from L.A., among many, many others. Although all of the males that I have just mentioned were indeed gay, and John L's drew a predominantly gay clientele, openly gay acts had yet to be fully embraced. Well, at least in Texas. We were just funny that way. Sunday nights became open mic night at John L's, hosted by my mentor and friend Jim Caruso. And I remember one night a young all-female band coming in to try out some songs. They were called the Dixie Chicks. Yeah, they did pretty well. The camaraderie amongst all of us was incredibly positive and supportive. In fact, thanks to some of these other performers, Less Miserable began to play in Provincetown, West Hollywood, and New York City as well. I'd have to say that the time of 1988 to 1994 was the heyday of the cabaret scene in Dallas. But alas, nothing lasts forever. Johnny Lemons died, as did his money backers. John L's changed hands 2 or 3 times until it ultimately ran its course, and so too did Less Miserable. Each of the 3 of us had our own ideas and goals about the future of Less Miserable, but oddly enough, they weren't the same. Stephen wanted Less Miserable to find a permanent, weekly space in Dallas and become the Beach Blanket Babylon or Esther's Follies of Dallas. I wanted us to begin touring exclusively, fearing that performing every weekend in Dallas would make people tire of seeing us. Well, Pat didn't care either way. He just wanted to know how much money we were going to make. Stephen began developing his own one-man, all-character shows, which he still performs to this day at the Pocket Sandwich Theater. Pat Skinner has been in Los Angeles since 2000, balancing retail and his acting career. I made the decision for myself that I wanted to go out on my own and pursue life as a stand-up comic, a decision which I have never regretted and which has led me to continue honing my craft to the incredible successes that I have today. Along the way, I decided that I didn't want to keep doing anything that was an imitation of someone else. Therefore, I stopped doing anything associated with Dana Carvey's brilliant work, and I reformed a character so obviously inspired by Church Lady into my own creation of a satirical prude, cloaking herself in the hypocrisy of the Southern Baptist Church. You know her today as Sister Helen Holy. Well, bless your hearts. Thank you. Sodomites. My post-John L's years included 6 years of living, working, learning, and performing in New York City from 1997 to 2003, and now 10 years back home here in Dallas. You know, there's really a lot more to my deluxe story, including years of invaluable work, exposure, and learning with the Turtle Creek Chorale, and various jobs within the incredible Dallas theater community. But I owe it all to a little bar at the corner of Oak Lawn and Brown, being starstruck by Ricky Graham and the amazing men and women of Dallas's LGBT community whose support and laughter have made me who I am today. For you see, I am a living, successful product of the Dallas way. Thank you.